Hello and welcome to this exploring session, this second first look exploring session looking at Jocasta, translated from an Italian play by George Gascoigne, Francis Kinwelmersh of Gray's Inn. We're still in the middle of some Gascoigne. He wrote Act 2, Act 3, and Act 5, I believe, off the top of my head. But we will dive into a little bit of Kinwelmersh for a little bit of Act 4, which we're getting to. We're looking at Act 2, Scene 2 today, onwards, up to, the beginning of Act 4. With this wonderful team of readers as we sort of dig into this text, homeopathically connected to some Euripides. So today, reading Eteocles, the Dumbshows, and also Nuntius later on is...
Hi, David in London.
Reading Jocasta and Sacredos is...
Rachael, Nicole, actor in New Jersey. Cat hair in my eyes.
Reading Creon, who has as of yet not appeared in the drama, but is going to be quite central for a while, is...
Liza Graham, actor, singer, and early modern text coach to actors in London.
And reading Manto, Meneceus, and also the chorus will be...
Hi, I'm Eric, and this has nothing to do with the play. I looked it up. There are no plays called Jocasta in ancient Greece.
No, it may be vaguely connected to the Phoenician women, but otherwise, there's a lot of the text which has nothing to do with anything apart from whatever the original playwright decided to do with it. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I am reading Tyresias today because I always read Tyresias. You need no more explanation than that. So, without further ado, we are, as I say, midway through Act 2. We've just had a bit of a barney between Eteocles and Meneceus and their mother, Jocasta. So it's all a bit up in the air as to who's going to be ruling. Well, there's going to be probably a bit of a fight going on here for this, as no kind of compromise was reached. So, we have on stage Eteocles. He's returned by one of the gates, and in a moment we will have the entrance of Creon, but it starts off with Eteocles.
Since I have rid mine enemy out of sight, the best shall be for Creon now to send my mother's brother, that with him I may reason, consult, confer, and counsel both, what shall be best to use in our defence before we venture forth into the field. But of this travail, lo, he me acquits, that comes in haste towards these royal towers.
Here Creon, attended by 4 gentlemen, cometh in by the gates homoloides.
O mighty king, not causeless now I come, to find that long have sought your majesty, so to discharge the duty that I owe to you by comfort and by counsel both.
No less desire this heart of mine did press, to send for thee, Creon, since that in vain my mother hath her words and travail spent to reconcile Meneceus and me. For he, so dull was his capacity, did think he could by dread of danger win my princely heart to yield to him his realm.
I understand. The army that he brings against this walls is such that I need doubt our city's force may scarce the same resist. Yet true it is that right and reason both are on our side, which bring the victory oft times, for we our country to defend, as they to subdue the same in arms are come. But what I would unto your highness show is of more weight, and more behoves to know.
And what is that? Oh, quickly tell it me.
A Greek prisoner is come unto my hands.
And what saith he that doth so much import?
That even already been their ranks in ray, and straight will give assault to these our walls.
Then must I straight prepare our citizens in glittering arms to march into the field.
O prince, and pardon me, thy youthful years nor see themself, nay, let thee once discern what best behoveth in this doubtful case. For prudence, she that is the mighty queen of all good works, grows by experience, which is not found with few days seeking for.
And were not this both sound and wise advice, boldly to look our foemen in the face, before they spread our fields with hugy host, and all the town beset by siege at once?
We be but few, and they in number great.
Our men have yet more courage far than they.
That know I not, nor am I sure to say.
Those eyes of thine in little space shall see how many I myself can bring to ground.
That would I like, but hard it is to do.
I nill pen up our men within the walls.
In counsel yet the victory consists.
And wilt thou then I use some other rede?
What else? Be still a while, for haste makes waste.
By night I will the camisado give.
So may you do, and take the overthrow.
The vantage is to him that does assault.
Yet skirmish given by night is perilous.
Let's set upon them as they sit at meat.
Sudden assaults affray the mind, no doubt, but we had need to overcome.
So shall we do.
No sure, unless some other counsel help.
Amid their trenches shall we them invade?
As who should say were none to make defence.
Should I then yield the city to my foes?
No, but advise you well if you be wise.
That were thy part, that know'st more than I.
Then shall I say that best doth seem to me.
Yea, Creon, yea, thy counsel hold I dear.
7 men of courage have they chosen out.
A slender number for so great emprise.
But they them chose for guides and captains.
To such an host, why they may not suffice.
Nay, to assault the 7 gates of the city.
What then behoveth so bestad to done?
With equal number, see you do them match.
And then commit our men in charge to them.
Choosing the best and boldest bloods in Thebes.
And how shall I the city then defend?
Well, with the rest, for one man sees not all.
And shall I choose the boldest or the wisest?
Nay, both, for one without that other fails.
Force without wisdom then is little worth.
That one must be fast to that other joined.
Creon, I will thy counsel follow still. For why I hold it wise and trusty both, and out of hand for now, I will depart. That I in time the better may provide, before occasion slip out of my hands, and that I may this Polynices quell. For well may I with bloody knife him slay that comes in arms my country for to spoil. But if so please to fortune and to fate, that other end than I do think may fall to thee, my friend, it resteth to procure the marriage twixt my sister Antigone and thy dear son Himone, to whom for dower. At parting thus, I promise to perform as much as late I did behest to thee. My mother's blood and brother dear thou art. Nay, need I crave of thee to guard her well. As for my father, care I not, for if so chance I die, it may full well be said his bitter curses brought me to my bane.
The Lord defend, for that unworthy were.
Of Thebes town the rule and sceptre, I need nor aught it otherwise dispose than unto thee, if I dare die without heir. Yet longs my lingering mind to understand the doubtful end of this unhappy war. Wherefore I will thou send thy son to seek Tyresias the divine, and learn of him, for at my call I know he will not come, that often have his arts and him reproved.
As you command, so ought I to perform.
And last, I thee and city both command, if fortune friendly favour our attempts, and make our men triumphant victors all, that none there be so hardy, nay so bold, for Polynices' bones to give a grave. And who presumes to break my hest herein, shall die the death in penance of his pain. For though I were by blood to him conjoined, I part it now, and justice girth with me to guide my steps victoriously before. Pray you to Jove, he deign for to defend our city safe, both now and evermore.
Gramercy, worthy prince, for all thy love and faithful trust thou dost in me repose. And if should hap that I hope never shall, I promise yet to do what best behoves, but chiefly this I swear, and make a vow, for Polynices now our cruel foe, to hold the best that thou dost me command.
And Creon attendeth Eteocles to the gates, Electrae, and he returneth and goeth out by the gates called Homoloides. We are left with the chorus to close the act.
O fierce and furious Mars, whose harmful heart rejoiceth most to shed the guiltless blood, whose head he will doth all the world subvert, and doth envy the pleasant merry mood of our estate, that erst in quiet stood. Why dost thou thus our harmless town annoy, which mighty Bacchus governed in joy? Father of war and death, that dost remove with wrathful wreck from woeful mothers' breasts the trusty pledges of their tender love. So grant the gods that for our final rest, Dame Venus' pleasant looks may please thee best, whereby when thou shalt all amazed stand, the sword may fall out of thy trembling hand, and thou mayst prove some other way full well the bloody prowess of thy mighty spear, wherewith thou raisest from the depths of hell the wrathful sprites of all the furies there, who when they wake do wander everywhere, and never rest to range about the coasts, to enrich that pit with spoil of damned ghosts. And when thou hast our fields forsaken thus, let cruel discord bear thee company, engirt with snakes and serpents venomous, even she that can with red vermilion dye the gladsome green that flourished pleasantly, and make the greedy ground a drinking cup to sup the blood of murdered bodies up. Yet thou return, O joy and pleasant peace, from whence thou didst against our will depart. Nay, let thy worthy mind from travail cease, to chase disdain out of the poisoned heart, that raised war to all our pains and smart, even from the breast of Oedipus his son, whose swelling pride hath all this jar begun. And thou, great God, that dost all things decree, and sittst on high above the starry skies, thou chiefest cause of causes all that be, regard not his offense, but hear our cries, and speedily redress our miseries. For what can we poor woeful wretches do, but crave thy aid and only cleave thereto?
And thus ends the second act, done by George Gascoigne. We're getting a full exposition of this of the whole of the seven gates at Thebes, 7 battles at Thebes, seven champions of the 7 gates of Thebes for this particular set piece, which does appear in play form in other places, known as 7 of Thebes, and also in the potential source text for this. Yes, I've it's been a long time since I've done lots of Theban plays. It's and Theban material. It's nice. I feel like I'm coming home. It's all very familiar to me. So Creon here. The suggestion is essentially, if I don't come back from war, Creon, you take over. Marry my sister to your son, setting up a chain of events that. If you know other plays that are available on a Greekish theme, you might know where some of this is going. Thoughts from the room about this particular exchange? Much more choppy. A lot of short lines, back and forths, batting between each other. Eric?
I found it interesting because Creon and Eteocles speak to each other as if they're not related up to a certain point, and then suddenly it's like, because like Eteocles introduces him as my mother's brother, which you'd think, he'd go, uncle, let's do this. There's no terms of affection here. It's just like sort of, worthy prince, king, whatever, youthful king, and that kind of stuff. It's just very formal.
Yeah, David.
I mean, to answer Eric's point, I think that in a lot of these particularly these Greek tragedies and those inspired by the Greek tragedies, these characters are both their family members and they're members of a politic as well. They're heads of state, etc. So they're having to do 2 things at once, aren't they? Really, they have this double personage about them. If Angela had been with us tonight, I think she might have accepted that Eteocles was not simply a villain. I mean, he seems to have a bit more light and shade in him tonight, and it's quite interesting the way he defers to Creon, I think, even to the point in which he's almost just asking questions of Creon and is almost looking which way to go to be guided by Creon, I think.
I think it's that thing, you come out of a very heated argument with the rest of your family, and whereas you think that if his relationship with Creon seems a lot more formal, he's maybe he's the steady hand on the ship of state, and of course he could be an evil control freak for all I know. I don't know, but yeah, there's there is a different relationship that is being presented here, and that's nice. Other thoughts before we dive into the next act? How's Creon for you, Liza?
Well, spoilers, I know he does some pretty terrible stuff in the future, but in this scene I quite like him. He absolutely does the job of a general who knows more than his king does and has to guide his king to make the right decision. Which you mostly do by saying, "Yes, sir. Are you sure about that, sir? I will carry out whatever you order, sir, but are you sure? Yes, sir." So, it's very much a soldier thing that when your superior commands you to do something stupid, you have to figure out a way to steer them to command you to do something better.
Yeah. And then we get the chorus as well, following on. The chorus is doing some good work here. Any other thoughts in the room, Eric? Are you sort of? I can't tell. Is your hand sort of?
Sorry,
sort of going,
I'm like thinking about
maybe,
things while also listening to you talk, and then like processing at the same time. Multitasking is not my strong point. No, it's just the chorus had some good stuff. Like, what can we poor woeful wretches do is just hard to get your mouth around sometimes. Yeah, no, I was just going to mention a line that Eteocles says, which basically describes the sort of state of the family. He says, my mother's blood and brother dear thou art, about Creon. And then he says, as for my father, care I not. So basically he gives anything about the male side of the family.
Yeah, and weirdly, it's Creon that pulls him up on it. It's Creon that says, you should reverence your father. It's blasphemous not to.
Yeah.
Which is still the early modern point of view, too, I think.
Yeah, and also maybe from Creon's point of view, having lived through Oedipus the king, he's seen what happens when gods are not happy, and maybe he's a bit more careful about the terrible situation. Also, this family's seriously messed up, so let's not pretend that anyone here is necessarily. Their decision making is sometimes going to be a bit odd, reasonable within their point of view, but they've got a lot to contend with.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, Creon is free from the whole incest plot. He's Jocasta's brother, but weirdly, he wants to marry his daughter to Jocasta's daughter, to his son to Jocasta's daughter. So Heman, if he lives, will get caught up in the whole family incest web. No spoilers.
Yeah, but that's to be fair, it's been a few thousand years for this plot. I'm not sure how careful we should be about spoilers, but we will continue to be careful about that, where it's going. Yeah, but this is a more a carefully sanctioned royal marriage thing. It's less of an issue then. There is incest, planned incest is more par for the course. Eric, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, because this part seems a bit more better written than the first part. I don't know, maybe it's just the way it flows better.
I think generally we found last time the first act was really hard work and the second act picked up enormously. So I think we're generally going George good is the the simple version of that.
But I was just wondering, why do we have these different, like, sort of, why would they just have? Is it sort of like with that lawyer's play where one person wrote one act and then another person wrote another act and so on, or did they just sort of go, yeah, we'll divide the work, it'll be fine?
Yeah, I don't quite know how the logic of the Inns of Court works, but maybe it's just it's not for the commercial reasons that plays are split up in playhouses later on. Where it's you need to turn over plays really quickly. I don't know if there's a formal reason for it. It just seems to be because the plays are very structured. One act tends to be one unit of action. It's easy to do, and maybe they're supposed to be doing some damned work. Students, I don't know if Gascoigne is a student by this point, but it's an area I don't know that much about. So it's an excellent question. I just don't know the answer. Rachael, did you have more before we move on?
I was just gonna say that, I don't know, like in television writing and things like that, there's people that get together, like in, what do you call it, late night talk shows or like Saturday Night Live, that it's people that get into a room and they try and get their jokes in. Maybe it was like they were just, this is just, conjecture, I guess, but just they were together for some reason and they were hired on a certain job or for a certain theater or certain company asked them to do this, and they were just all trying to get their bits in.
Well, this is for the Inns of Court, so it's student in that sense. But and we do have an example of sort of editorial meetings for things. So if we're going on a literary thing, Mirror for Magistrates, the entire book is structured around a series of editorial meetings about who's going to write what bit. And that has a sort of collegiate quality to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's sort of a group of students sitting around late at night putting some, sitting there drinking, thinking about how they're gonna, who's gonna write what. And I really want the blitz with blood in it. I've got a great idea to what to do with that, man. Kind of vibe. I'm really going off on one here. Stop me, someone. Okay, we're going to definitely dive into the third act. So we may or may not stop with the dumb show. I think we'll probably read the dumb show and then roll on for a bit. Eric, if I could ask you to read some of the stage directions going forward. You do have a role to play, but not next to a stage direction, I believe.
Before the beginning of this third act did sound a very doleful noise of cornets, during the which there opened and appeared in the stage a great gulf. Immediately came in 6 gentlemen in their doublets and hose, bringing upon their shoulders baskets full of earth, and threw them into the gulf to fill it up. But it would not so close up, nor be filled. Then came the ladies and dames that stood by, throwing in their chains and jewels, so to cause it to stop up and close itself. But when it would not so be filled, came in a knight with his sword drawn, armed at all points, who walking twice or thrice about it, and perusing it, seeing that it would neither be filled with earth, nor with their jewels and ornaments, after solemn reverence done to the gods, and courteous leave taken of the ladies and standers by, suddenly leapt into the gulf, the which did close up immediately, betokening unto us the love that every worthy person oweth unto his native country by the history of Curtius, who for the like cause adventured the like in Rome. This done, blind Tyresias, the divine prophet, led in by his daughter and conducted by Meneceus, the son of Creon, entereth by the gates Electrae, and saith as followeth.
Thou trusty guide of my so trustless steps, dear daughter mine, go we, lead thou the way. For since the day I did first did lease this light, thou only art the light of these mine eyes. And for thou knowest I am both old and weak, and ever longing after lovely rest, direct my steps amidst the plainest paths, that so my feebled feet may feel less pain. Meneceus, thou gentle child, tell me, is it far hence, the place where we must go, whereas thy father for my coming stays? For like unto the slothful snail I draw, dear son, with pain these aged legs of mine, and though my mind be quick, scarce can I move.
Creon returneth by the gates Homoloides.
Comfort thyself, divine. Creon, thy friend, lo, standeth here, and came to meet with thee to ease the pain that thou must else sustain. For unto eld each travel yields annoy, and thou, his daughter and his faithful guide, lo, rest him here, and rest thou there with all thy virgin's hands, that in sustaining him doth well acquit the duty of a child. For crooked age and hoary silver hairs still craveth help of lusty youthful years.
Gramercy, Lord, what is your noble will?
What I would have of thee, Tyresias, is not a thing so soon for to be said, but rest awhile thy weak and weary limbs, and take some breath now after weary walk. And tell, I pray thee, what this crown doth mean, that sits so kingly on thy skilful head.
Know this, that for I did with grave advice foretell the citizens of Athens town how they might best with loss of little blood have victories against their enemies, have been the cause why I do wear this crown, as right were reward and not unmeet for me.
So take I then this thy victorious crown for our avail, in token of good luck. That knowest how the discord and debate which late is fallen between these brethren twain hath brought all Thebes in danger and in dread. Eteocles, our king, with threatening arms is gone against his Greekish enemies, commanding me to learn of thee, who art a true divine of things that be to come, what were for us the safest to be done from peril now our country to preserve.
Long have I been within the town of Thebes, since that I tried this trusty tongue of mine from telling truth, fearing Eteocles. Yet since thou dost in so great need desire I should reveal things hidden unto thee, for common cause of this our commonweal, I stand content to pleasure thee herein. But first, that to this mighty God of yours there might some worthy sacrifice be made, let kill the fairest goat that is in Thebes within these bowls, when the priest shall look, and tell to me what he hath there espied. I trust thee advise thee what is best to do.
Lo, here the temple, and ere long I look to see the holy priest that hither comes, bringing with him the pure and fair offerings which thou requirest. For not long since I sent for him, as one that am not ignorant of all your rites and sacred ceremonies. He went to choose amid our herd of goats the fattest, there, and look where now he comes.
Sacredos, accompanied with 16 bacchanals, and all his rites and ceremonies, entereth by the gates Homoloides.
O famous citizens, that hold full dear your quiet country, lo, where I do come, most joyfully with wonted sacrifice, so to beseech the supreme citizens to stay our state that staggeringly doth stand, and plant us peace where war and discord grows. Wherefore with heart devout and humble cheer, whiles I break up the bowls of this feast, whiles I break up the bowels of this feast, that oft thy vineyard Bacchus hath destroyed, let every wight crave pardon for his faults, with bending knee about his altars here go.
Take here the salt, and sprinkle therewithal about the neck. That done, cast all the rest into the sacred fire, and then anoint the knife prepared for the sacrifice. O mighty Jove, preserve the precious gift that thou me gave, when first thine angry queen for deep disdain did both mine eyes do out. grant me I may foretell the truth in this. For but by thee I know that I ne may, ne will, ne can one trusty sentence say.
This do is done.
With knife then stick the kid.
Thou daughter of divine Tyresias, with those unspotted virgins' hands of thine, receive the blood within this vessel here, and then devoutly it to Bacchus yield.
O holy god of Thebes, that dost both praise sweet peace and dost in heart also disdain the noisome noise, the furies and the fight of bloody Mars and of Bellona both. O thou, the giver of both of joy and health, receive and green with willing hand these whole burnt offerings unto thee. And as this town doth wholly thee adore, so by thy help do grant that it may stand safe from the enemy's outrage evermore.
Now, in thy sacred name, I bow here this sacrifice.
And what entrails hath it?
Fair and well formed, all in every point, the liver clean, the heart is not infect, save, lo, I find but one heartstring, no, by which I find something I wot never what, that seems corrupt, and were not only that, in all the rest they are both sound and whole.
Now cast at once into the holy flame the sweet incense, and then advertise me what hue it bears, and every other rite that aught may help the truth for to conject.
I see the flames do sundry colours cast, now bloody sanguine, straightway purple, blue, some parts seem black, some grey, and some be green.
Stay there. Sufficeth this for to have seen. Know, Creon, that these outward seemly signs, by that the gods have let me understand, who know the truth in every secret thing, betoken that the city great of Thebes shall victor be against the Greekish host. If so, consent be given. But more than this, I list not say.
Alas, for courtesy, say on, Tyresias. Never have respect to any living man, but tell the truth.
In this meanwhile I will return with speed, from whence I came, for lawful is it not, that such as I should hear your secrecies.
Sacredos returneth with the bacchanals by the gates homoloides.
Contrary then to that which I have said, the incest, foul, and childbirth monstrous of Jocasta so stirs the wrath of Jove, this city shall with bloody channels swim, and angry Mars shall overcome it all with famine, flame, rape, murder, dole, and death. These lusty towers shall have a headlong fall, these houses burned, and all the rest be razed, and soon be said, Here whilom Thebes stood. One only way I find for to escape, which both would thee displease to hear it told, and me to tell per case were perilous. Thee, therefore, with my travail I commend to Jove, and with the rest I will endure whatso shall chance for our adversity.
Yet stay a while.
Creon, make me not stay by force.
Why fleest thou?
Sir, 'tis not from thee I flee, but from this fortune foul and fell.
Yet tell me, what behoves the city do?
Thou, Creon, seemest now desirous still it to preserve, but if, as well as I, thou knewest that which is to thee unknown, then wouldst thou not so soon consent thereto.
Then would I not, with eager mind, desire the thing that may for Thebes aught avail.
And dost thou then so instantly request to know which way thou mayest the same preserve?
For nothing else I sent my son of late to seek for thee.
Then will I satisfy thy greedy mind in this. But first tell me, Meneceus, where is he?
Not far from me.
I pray thee send him out some other where.
Why wouldst thou that he should not be here?
I would not have him hear what I should say.
He is my son, nay will it he reveal.
And shall I then, while he is present, speak?
Yea, be thou sure that he no less than I doth wish full well unto this common weal.
Then, Creon, shalt thou know, the mean to save this city is that thou shalt slay thy son, and of his body make a sacrifice for his country. Lo, here is all you seek, so much to know, and since you have me forced to tell the thing that I would not have told, if I have you offended with my words, blame then yourself, and eke your froward fate.
Oh, cruel words! Oh, what hast thou said, thou cruel soothsayer?
Even that heaven hath ordained once, and needs it must ensue.
How many evils hast thou knit up in one?
No evil for thee, yet for thy country good.
And let my country perish, what care I?
Above all things we ought to hold it dear.
Cruel were he that would not love his child.
For common weal were well that one man wail.
To lose mine own, I list none other save.
Best citizens care least for private gain.
Depart for now, with all thy prophecies.
Lo, thus the truth doth always hatred get.
Yet pray I thee by these thy silver hairs,
The harm that comes from heaven cannot be scaped.
and by thy holy spirit of prophecy,
What heaven have done, that cannot I undo.
that to no mo this secret thou reveal.
Wouldst thou have me learn to make a lie?
I pray thee hold thy peace.
That will I not, but in thy woe to yield thee some relief, I tell thee once thou shalt be lord of Thebes, which hath of mine this string did well declare, which from the heart doth out a lonely grow. So did the piece corrupted plainly show, an argument most evident to prove, thy son his death.
Well, yet be thou content to keep full close this secret, hidden grief.
I neither ought ne will keep it so close.
Shall I be then the murderer of mine own?
Me blame not me, but blame the stars for this.
Can heavens condemn but him alone to die?
We ought believe the cause is good and just.
Unjust is he condemns the innocent.
A fool is he accuseth great folly heavens of wrongs.
Then can no ill thing come from heavens above.
And this that heaven commands cannot be ill.
I not believe that thou hast talked with God.
Because I tell thee that doth thee displease.
Out of my sight, accursed lying wretch!
Go, daughter, go. Oh, what a fool is he that puts inure to publish prophecies. For if he do foretell a froward fate, though it be true, yet shall he purchase hate. And if he silence keep or hide the truth, the heavy wrath of mighty gods ensue. Apollo, he might well tell things to come that had no dread the angry to offend. But hie we, daughter, hence some other way.
Tyresias with Manto his daughter returneth by the gates called Electri.
And there we'll stop. Yes, as we play the traditional game of the prophet is never thanked for their prophecies. It's a thankless task being a prophet. There's no profit in it, frankly, because your customers are just never satisfied. I love the fact there's this massive ritual in the middle. I mean, they're sacrificing a sodding goat. How was this done? I'm assuming they didn't actually sacrifice a real goat, because that would be a bit too pagan.
This act has a lot of tech, assuming that the dumb show was actually done and isn't just published. Like, how do you have the earth open up and a cleft that can't be filled except for some dude who jumps in it? Like, levers, weights, pulleys, presumably maybe a platform brought in for that specific dumb show and then carried out, because who wants to act the rest of the play on a platform that might split open if the guy down below does the wrong thing?
Well, I'm just wondering, is this the same fire pit we had earlier, or part of the same sort of works? I mean, it does feel, yeah. There's so much going on screen as I'm now completely distracted by a cat. Yeah, there's so much going on here. Is this a fake goat but with which they cut open and we get entrails, and how does that work? I mean, wow.
I assume fake goat. I assume goat skin with a blood bag and some fake bowels. I suppose you could do real dried intestines and just stuff them with red dyed wool or something, or I assume that if you used a real goat, I mean, what would you rehearse with, and what kind of mess would it leave on the stones? So I'm assuming.
I wouldn't want to be the stage manager who has to clear the goat.
Well, presumably the priest clears the goat, and the Bacchae take care of any lingering mess.
That's what the hole's for.
Imagine a long run. You'd have to have 30 goats all waiting in the wings, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah.
The goats of Christmas past.
Yeah. The things we do for revels. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's so important, it's so detailed, and burn the incense and thing. What's the color? So does that mean we've got different colored flames, which means different colored elements being tossed into the flames as well? If you're performing that's not by any means beyond the wit of the early modern. But again, it's another thing you have to do. And yeah, I'm still really leaning into the thought from yesterday that this feels very outdoorsy, and this is a whole thing that would just be so much easier to do outdoors. That may be a total nonsense, but now that thought has started, I can't quite let go of it. There's so many people in this play still. Yeah, I love Tyresias. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they are amazing.
Yes, that's true. Tyresias has been many people. Other thoughts, Eric?
I just want to offer up "with knife then stick the kid" as a T-shirt line, or just something you can say at parties and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it was quite difficult to say that without bathos. It has to be said. It was a bit too blunt.
I kind of love how all the plosive consonants make you say it slowly, though.
Mm.
What's
Yeah.
interesting also is
Eric. Sorry.
I was just going to mention the sort of the references to color. There are just so many, which was quite I hadn't noticed yesterday, but in this part, in this act, and then the previous one, it just it's green and sanguine and blue and purple and all that stuff. It just sounds very sort of rich and colorful.
Mm. So we got we haven't talked about the message from the gods, which is Creon. You need to sacrifice a son. Chuck him off a gate, I think, is the approved method. But I think other sacrifices are available. Methods. So yeah, it's a big thing to ask. I mean, not surprising. I love the way Tyresias says, "Shall we clear the room?" Because you know what, I think they're not going to like this thing. Who's in the room? Who's in the room? So yeah, leading to what's probably going to be an awkward scene coming next. Any other thoughts before we read on, Eric?
I just like how he's like, "Tell your son to go away," and then obviously he doesn't tell him to leave, and so obviously that third person is still in the room.
Oh yeah, he
listening
says
to
no,
how
he
he
can
has
stay.
to be murdered.
Yeah, I mean that's super awkward. If so you want me to tell you what? Really, he could go. It'd be much better. David, did you want to say something?
Yes, Liza was saying earlier that again, plot spoiler, that later on Creon does things that are of which we may not approve, and but I mean in Sophocles' Antigone, I mean which is what I know better. I mean, I don't think that Creon murdering or sacrificing his son is mentioned at all. I mean,
I don't think it crops up in there. It does crop up in, I think, Seven at Thebes. I
yeah.
can't remember of the Aeschylus play, but I can't remember. It's been a long time.
No, yeah. I mean, in Antigone, he is much more well. We're still dealing with these sort of these moral and political decisions, but the personal is very much focused on the burial, not on the son he has lost.
Well, here we have a political question. Is killing one person to save a city justified?
Mm-hmm.
What is the value of a single life? That's a big question.
It is a big question.
Which I think the player is going to continue wrestling with in just a moment. Any other thoughts? No? Okay, let's go into Act 3, Scene 2. I will recommence being stage directions. And so we have Creon, awkward silence as he turns to his child.
O my dear child, well hast thou heard with ear these weary news, or rather wicked tales, that this divine of thee divined hath. Yet will thy father never be thy foe, with cruel doom thy death for to consent.
You rather ought, O father, to consent unto my death, since that my death may bring unto this town both peace and victory. Nay, can I purchase more praiseworthy death than for my country's wealth to lose my breath?
I cannot praise this witless will of thine.
You know, dear father, that this life of ours is brittle, short, and nothing else indeed, but tedious toil and pangs of endless pain. And death, whose dart to some men seems so foul, brings quiet end to this unquiet life. Pleasure unto which end whose soonest doth arrive, finds soonest rest of all his restless grief. And were it so that here on earth we felt no prick of pain, nor that our flattering days were never dashed by froward fortune's frown, yet being born as all men are, to die, were not this worthy glory and renown, to yield the country soil where I was born for so long time so short a time as mine? I cannot think that this can be denied. Then if to shun this haughty high behest, mine only cause, O father, doth you move, be sure you seek to take from me, your son, the greatest honour that I can attain. But if your own commodity you move, so much the less you ought the same allow. For look, how much the more you have in Thebes, so much more you ought to love me the same. Here have you Hemen, he that in my stead, O dear father, may with you remain, so that although you may be deprived of me, yet shall you not be quite deprived of heirs.
I cannot choose, dear son, but disallow this thy too hasty, hot desire of death. For if thy life thou settest also light, yet oughtest thou thy father, me, respect, who, as I draw the more to lumpish age, so much more need have I to crave thine aid. Nay, will I yet with stubborn tongue deny that for his common weal to spend his life doth win the subject high renowned name. But how, in armour, to defend the state, not like a beast to bleed in sacrifice? And therewithal, if any should consent to such a death, then should the same be I, that have prolonged life even long enough. Nay, many days have I now to draw on, and more avail might to the country come, dear son, to hold that lusty life of thine, that art both young and eke of courage stout, than may by me that feeble am and old. Then live, dear son, in high prosperity, and give me leave that worthy am to die.
Yet worthy were not that unworthy change.
If such a death bring glory, give it me.
Not you, but me the heavens call to die.
We be but one, in flesh and body both.
I father ought not so not you so I father ought so ought not you to die.
If thou, son, die, think not that I can live. Then let me die, and so shall he first die that ought to die, and yet but one shall die.
Although father ought to obey your hest, yet evil it were in this to yield your will.
Thy wit is wily for to work thy woe.
Oh, tender pity moveth me thereto.
A beast is he that kills himself with knife of pity to preserve another's life.
Yet wise is he that doth obey the gods.
The gods will not the death of any wight.
Whose life they take, they give him life also.
But thou dost strive to take thy life thyself.
Nay, them to obey that will I shall not live.
What fault, O son, condemneth thee to death?
Who liveth, father, here without fault?
I see no guilt in thee that death deserves.
But God it seeth that every secret seeth.
How should we know what is the will of God?
We know it then when he reveals the same.
As though he would come down to tell it us.
By diverse means his secrets he discloseth.
Oh, fond is he who thinks to understand the mysteries of Jove his secret mind, and for to end this controversy here, lo, thus I say, I will we both live yet. Prepare thee then my hests to hold and keep, and pull adown that stubborn heart of thine.
You may of me as of yourself dispose, and since my life doth seem so dear to you, I will preserve the same to your avail, that I may spend it always to your will.
Then thee behoves out of this town to fly, before the bold and blind Tyresias do publish this that is as yet unknown.
And where or in what place shall I become?
Where thou mayst be hence furthest out of sight.
You may command, and I ought to obey.
Go to the land of Thesbiotia.
Oh, where Dodona doth sit in sacred chair.
Even there, my child.
And who shall guide my wandering steps?
High Jove.
Who shall give sustenance for my relief?
There will I send thee heaps of glistering gold.
But when shall I eftsoon my father see?
Ere long, I hope. But now, for now depart. For every lingering let or little stay may purchase pain or torment both to me.
First would I take my congé of the queen, that since that the day my mother lost her life hath nourished me as if I were her own.
Oh, tarry not, my dear son, tarry not.
And Creon goes out by the gates of Homolides.
Behold, father, I go. You dames of Thebes, pray to Almighty Jove for my return. You see how mine unhappy stars me drive to go my country fro, and if so chance know I end in woe, my prime and lusty years, before the course of nature do them call. Honor my death yet with your dreary plaints, and I shall eke whereso this carcass come. Pray to the gods that they preserve this town.
And Meneceus departeth by the gates Electrae, and Eric takes a dim breath before churning into the chorus to close the act.
When she that rules the rolling wheel of chance doth turn aside her angry frowning face on him whom erst she deigned to advance, she never leaves to goad him with disgrace, to toss and turn his state in every place, till at last she hurl him from on high, and yield him subject unto misery. And as the branch that from the root is reft, he never wins like leaf to that he left. Yea, although he do, he yet cannot taste of joy, compare with pangs that passed in his annoy. Well did the heavens ordain for our behoof, necessity and fates by them allowed, that when we did see our high mishaps aloof, as though our eyes were muffled with a cloud, Our froward will doth shrink itself and shroud from our avail, wherewith we run so far as none amends can make that we do mar. Then draws evil hap and strives to shew his strength, and such as yield unto his might. At length he leads them by necessity the way that destiny prepared for our decay. The mariner amid the swelling seas, who seeth his bark with many a billow beaten, now here, now there, as wind and waves best please, when thundering Jove with tempest list to threaten, and dreads in deepest gulf for to be eaten, yet learns the mean by mere necessity to save himself in such extremity. For when he seeth no man hath wit nor power to fly from fate, when fortune lists to lower, his only hope on mighty Jove doth cast, whereby he wins wished heaven at last. How fond is that man in his fantasy who thinks that Jove, the maker of us all, and he that tempers all in heaven on high, the sun, the moon, the stars celestial, so that no leaf without his leave can fall, hath not in him omnipotence also to guide and govern all the things here below. O blinded eyes, O wretched mortals, wights, who, O subject slaves to every ill that lights, to escape such woe, such pain, such shame and scorn, happy were he that never had been born. Well might Duke Creon, driven by destiny, if true it be that old Tyresias saith, redeem our city from this misery by his consent unto Meneceus' death, who of himself would have fain lost his breath. But every man is loath to fulfill the heavenly best that pleaseth not his will. That public weal must needs to ruin go, where private profit is preferred so. Yet, mighty God, thine only aid we crave, this town from siege and us from sorrow save.
And so ends Act 3, done by George. Meneceus is quite up for the whole sacrifice thing. Surprisingly, I'm always amazed by what teenagers are into these days. It's a situation where Creon is not only trying to tell Tiresias that no, this is a terrible idea. He's actually then having to tell his son that this is a terrible idea. All sorts of things. Obviously, the chorus. Similarly, talking about obviously they just kind of would like not to die in the siege. Is their final note. Obviously, they talk about many things. Thoughts from the room. I mean, it really has caught fire. This play. Once we got through Act 1, it really was doing some really great work. And this continues that. It feels of akin with Greek tragedy. However, far removed it is. Thoughts from the room. Who wants to leap in on Creon and his son? Liza, then Rachael, I think. I'm not sure if Rachel's waving or just scaring away the cat. Liza.
Well, I think again, the Oedipus story is at its most riveting when it's a family drama, and hoo boy, was there ever a family like this one? But before we had two twin brothers who wanted to kill each other. And now we have a father who won't let his son die. We have an actual natural family tie. Presumably Creon married someone who wasn't his relative. Yay. He's
we
still a member.
This, by the way. It's a good starting point.
He's still a member of a family with a curse on it. There's a curse on the whole city. Tiresias has spoken. But we have, a scene that could have dropped out of Abraham and Isaac. Except Abraham does agree to sacrifice his son and Creon doesn't. We've seen him be the good general. We've seen him take order for the best defense of the city. We've seen him say he'd do anything for the city. And now he won't allow the one thing that could save the city happen because it would mean the death of his young son, too young to fight.
Yes, it's one thing to send him out to fight, it's another thing for him to be sacrificed in this way. And it's interesting, when they get to discussing, we've got some sort of mixing of gods and God, and it does feel like there's that sort of that later interpretation of God. How should we know what is the will of God? It feels like there's a sort of future nod there to where civilization should go by a later writer. Structurally, this is very similar to the Phoenician Women by Euripides. So far, scene by scene. Now we are following it structurally quite similarly. So this textual process of being rewritten and then translated in this way is bearing some interesting fruit. But we can do a little nod to Euripides. Rachael, did you want to step in? No. Then Eric.
I just wanted to highlight the line, so that no leaf without his leave can fall. It's like, hey, we're looking for alliteration. I don't know, just it attracted my attention that halfway while I was reading it.
But, it goes to show that gods are detail orientated. It's not just the big picture. Any other thoughts? I'm really liking the chorus here. I sometimes get very annoyed by choruses, but actually I've not been annoyed by this chorus on the whole. Eric?
Well, usually also the chorus has an opinion, whereas this one doesn't seem to express, they kind of express their desires, or like they echo sort of the desires of the characters, but they don't seem to have like a contrary opinion thus far. they just kind of go, please save us, or this is not I don't know, it's just sort of interesting, because usually in Greek tragedy you get the whole thing of I don't know, for when they're talking about Medea, for example, is this cruel woman has killed her children and stuff. Like they hate on the characters, whereas this one seems to be more like actually supportive.
Yes, and we've sometimes had in some of the early modern ones we've been looking at choruses that are espousing a moral compass that we're not particularly keen on, and just going, well, thank you for that lecture, please go away. So it's quite nice to have this who are just genuinely afraid for their lives. They are actors within the stage world. They're not distanced in any way. They're just talking to us direct. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we're going to dive into Act 4 in just a moment. We've got a dumb show coming up. We've got another dumb show. Always good to have a dumb show. Get great fans of the dumb show, and seeing where that's going to go. This Act 4, this is by Francis Kinwelmersh. So let's see whether there's a step change, or whether now the action's going, it's a different order. So let's have the order of the fourth dumb show, please.
Before the beginning of this fourth act, the trumpets, drums, and fifes sounded, and a great peal of ordnance was shot off, in the which there entered upon the stage 6 knights armed at all points, whereof 3 came in by the gates Electrae, and the other 3 by the gates Homoloides, either part being accompanied with 7 other armed men. And after they had marched twice or thrice about the stage, the one party menacing the other by their furious looks and gestures, the 6 knights caused their other attendants to stand by, and drawing their swords, fell to cruel and courageous combat, continuing therein till 2 on the one side were slain, the third, perceiving that he only remained to withstand the force of 3 enemies, did polluctly run aside. Wherewith immediately one of the 3 followed after him, and when he had drawn his enemy thus from his companies, he turned again and slew him. Then the second also ran after him, whom he slew in like manner, and consequently the third, and then triumphantly marched about the stage with his sword in his hand. Hereby was noted the incomparable force of concord between brethren, who, as long as they hold together, may not easily by any means be overcome, and being once dissevered by any means, are easily overthrown. The history of the brethren, Horatii and Curatii, who agreed to like combat and came to like end. After that, the dead carcasses were carried from the stage by the armed men on both parties, and that the victor was triumphantly accompanied out also, came in a messenger, armed from a camp, seeking the queen, and to her spake as followeth.
But we'll pause there because there's several little details there that I'm liking. It's a similar message that we had in Gorbodoc here. You know, if you have lots of sticks bundled together, you cannot break them. If you have lots of men fighting together, they will not die. Whereas if you take people on one at a time, like in an 80s fight, then you will lose. We also have a great peal of ordnance, which again is really pushing us to unless that's just a gross exaggeration of someone lets off a pop gun. But yeah, it really does feel outdoorsy, doesn't it? But yeah, we've got some combat. We've got some good stuff here. Thoughts, questions from the room. I may not be able to answer those questions. We may not be able to answer those questions. So ask questions if you do not have thoughts. Eric?
Well, also I guess it's sort of a change in, well, not necessarily dynamic, but definitely a change in something. Because suddenly you have trumpets, drums, and fifes as opposed to, viols and sort of doleful sounds and stuff. It's very different atmosphere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because every Dumbshow's pretty much been mournful, hasn't it? Has been the or something like, or strange and weird, or doleful. There we are. Whereas, yeah, this is much more sit up and listen. Bang, rattle, rattle, clatter. Enter knights. Drawing sword and falling to cruel and outrageous combat. Courageous. I was outrageous combat. Courageous combat. Yeah. So yes, I love the third, perceiving that only he remained to withstand the force of three enemies, did politically run aside. You can almost hear discretion is the better part of valor at the moment. Other thoughts? No, we've milked that Dumbshow for all we can get out of it. Okay, we're going to go into Act 4, Scene 1. It's the last scene of the session. It's quite chunky. So we have Jocasta, and then we have a messenger coming in by the gates, Homoloides.
O sage and sober dames, O shamefaced dames, maids, O faithful servants of our aged queen, come lead her forth. Sith unto her I bring such secret news as are of great import. Come forth, O queen, surcease thy woeful plaint, and to my words vouchsafe a willing ear.
My servant dear.
I apologise, sorry. The queen with her train cometh out of her palace.
My servant dear, dost thou yet bring me news of more mishap? Ah, weary wretch, alas! How doth Eteocles, whom heretofore in his increasing years I wanted from dangerous hap with favour to defend, doth he yet live, or hath untimely death in cruel fight bereft his flowering life?
He lives, O queen, hereof have you no doubt. From such suspect myself will quit you soon.
The venturous Greeks have haply ta'en the town?
The gods forbid.
Our soldiers then, perchance, dispersed between and yielding to the sword?
Not so, they were at first in danger sure, but in the end obtained victory.
Alas, then what becomes of Polynice? Oh, canst thou tell, is he dead or alive?
You have, O queen, yet both your sons alive.
Oh, how my heart is eased of his pain. Well, then proceed, and briefly let me hear how ye repulsed your proud presuming foes, that hereby yet at least I may assuage the swelling sorrows in my doleful breast. In that town is hitherto preserved, and for the rest I trust that mighty Jove will yield us aid.
No sooner had your worthy valiant son severed the dukes into several parts, and set them to defence of several gates, and brought in brave array his horsemen out, first to encounter with their mighty foe, and likewise pitched the footmen face to face against the footmen of their enemies. But fiercely straight the armies did approach, swarming so thick as covered clean the field, when dreadful blast of braying trumpets sound, of doleful drums and thundering cannon shot gave hideous sign of horror of the fight. Then gan the Greeks to give their sharp assault. Then from the walls our stout courageous men, with rolling stones, with pace of hugy beams, with flying darts, with flakes of burning fire, and deadly blows did beat them back again. Thus striving long with stout and bloody fight, whereby full many thousand slaughtered were. The hardy Greeks came underneath the walls, of whom first Capaneus, a lusty knight, did scale the walls, and on the top thereof did vaunt himself, when many hundred more with fierce assaults did follow him as fast. Then lo, the captains 7 bestirred themselves, whose names ye have already understood, some here, some there, naught dreading loss of life, with new relief to feed the fainting breach. And Polynice he bended all the force of his old charge against the greatest gate. When suddenly a flash of lightning flame from angry skies strake Captain Capaneus, that there down dead he fell, at sight whereof the gazers on there fraught with sudden fear, the rest that strove to mount the walls so fast. From ladders top did headlong tumble down. Herewith our men, encouraged by good hap, took hardy hearts, and so repulsed the Greeks. There was Eteocles and I with him, who setting first those soldiers to their charge, ran straight to th' other gates, and to the weak he manly comfort gave. Unto the bold his lusty words increased courage still. In so much as the mazed Grecian king, when he did hear of Capaneus his death, fearing thereby the gods became his foe, out from the trench withdrew his weary host. But rash Eteocles, presuming too much upon their flight, did issue out of Thebes, and forward straight with strength of chivalry his flying foes courageously pursued. Too long it were to make recompt of all that wounded been, or slain, or captive now. The cloudy air was filled round about with howling cries and woeful wailing plaints. So great a slaughter, O renowned queen, before this day I think was never seen. Thus have we now cut off the fruitless hope. The Grecians had to sack this noble town. What joyful end will happen hereunto, yet know I not. The gods turn all to good. To conquer, lo, is doubtless worthy praise, but wisely for to use the conquest got. Have ever won immortal sound of fame, well yet therewhile in this we may rejoice, sith heaven and heavenly powers are pleased therewith.
This good success was lucky, sure, and such as, for my part, I little looked for, to save the town and ache to have my sons, as you report, preserved yet alive, and but yet proceed, and further let me know the final end that they agreed upon.
No more, O Queen. Let this for now suffice, sith hitherto your state is safe enough.
These words of thine do whelm my jealous mind, with great suspect of other mischiefs hid.
What would you more, already being sure that both your sons in safety do remain?
I long to know the rest, or good or bad. No.
Oh, let me now return to Eteocles, that of my service greatly stands in need.
Right, well, I see. Thou doest conceal the worst.
Oh, force me not, the good now being past, to tell the ill.
Tell it, I say, on pain of our displeasure.
Since thus ye seek to hear a doleful tale, I will no longer stay. Wit ye therefore, your desperate sons together be agreed, for to attempt a wicked enterprise. To private fight they have betrothed themselves, of which conflict the end must needs be this, that one do live, that other die the death.
Alas, alas, this did I ever fear.
Now, sith I some I have revealed that, which you have heard with great remorse of mind, I will proceed at large to tell the whole. When your victorious son with valiant force had chased his foes into their joining tents, even there he stayed, and straight at sound of trump with stretched voice the herald thus proclaimed: You princely Greeks, that hither be arrived to spoil the fruit of these our fertile fields, and us to drive from this our native soil. O suffer not so many guiltless souls, by this debate descend in Stygian lake, for private cause of wicked Polynice, but rather let the brethren hand to hand, by mutual blows appease their furious rage, and so to cease from shedding further blood, and to the end you all might understand the profit that to every side may fall. Thus much my lord thought good to proffer you. This is his will. If he be overcome, then Polynice to rule this kingly realm. If so it hap, as reason would it should, our rightful prince to conquer Polynice. That then no one of you make more ado, but straight to Argos Isle haste home again. This thus pronouncest unto the noble Greeks. No sooner did the sound of trumpet cease, but Polynice stepped forth before the host, and to these words this answer did he make: O thou not brother, but my mortal foe, thy proffer here hath pleased me so well as presently, without more long delay, I yield myself prepared to the field. Our noble king no sooner heard this vaunt, but forth as fast he pressed his princely steps with eager mind, as hovering falcon wonts, to make her stoop when prey appears in sight. At all assays they both were bravely armed, to either side his sword fast being girt. In either's hand was put a sturdy lance, about Eteocles our soldiers clung, to comfort him, and put him then in mind he fought for safety of his country's soil, and that in him consisted all their hope. To Polynice the king Adrastus swore, if he escaped victor from the field, at his return he would in Greece erect a golden image unto mighty Jove in sign of this triumphing victory. But all this while seek you, O noble queen, to hinder this your furious son's attempt. Entreat the gods, it may not take effect, else must you needs ere long deprived be of both your sons, or of the one at least.
And the messenger exits. So we have a no-score draw on the battlefield front. Jocasta is there, fearing the worst, and the messenger comes on and says, "No, the people you're worried about are all fine." A lot of people died though. David.
I'm sorry, I almost corpsed because I almost said hoovering falcon instead of hovering, and then once I had that in my head, I just couldn't get it out. So.
Yeah, I did put in the chat. I want a hoovering falcon. Every home should have one. I just I see that as a nice little work of art. It's a beautiful thing.
Great speech.
Yes, we have big speeches about combat situations, but to be fair, we've just literally had a dumb show with a massive combat situation, or at least a relatively scaled one. So we're getting it in different ways, and yeah, it's a nice description. How are we finding this messenger, and also Jocasta's response to it so far?
Simply in terms of reading, obviously I'm reading it for the first time, and I hadn't read it ahead. some inverted commas around the speeches within speeches would be useful.
Yes, I started making notes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we haven't really had anybody doing that much reported speech. We've had that in other plays where we had, lengthy moments of people effectively playing somebody else.
Yeah.
Cleopatra did that quite a lot. So even when Cleopatra wasn't on stage, someone was being Cleopatra. Whereas here it's slightly different. So. Nuntius, he's a professional messenger. He can do all the voices where necessary.
Next time.
Well, yes, as I say, we're just doing a cold read, so just getting the idea. With some prep, we can always do more. Other thoughts? Rachael?
The Nuntius's speeches about this, battle, it reminds me of when we were reading The Misfortunes of Arthur, that very emotional, it's very emotional, this battle, because it's not just political, it's personal, and it's between these two family members. And also I think a cast, if this production was being put on, whoever was putting this production on, Polynices is so favored in his family by by Antigone and Jocasta, because she doesn't ask about Eteocles, she asks about Polynices and how he's doing. And also I still feel very strongly that Jocasta is, very much worried for this, not just her family, but the city, and that she's thinking more about that than either of her two sons.
It's an impossible situation, really. Being trapped in the middle of all of this, and how much control one has over that situation. You don't get the impression that Jocasta has got an awful lot of control over her life, because the gods have been playing wickedly with her for a fairly lengthy duration of time. Though some bad decisions were made as well. Other thoughts, David?
And this is set in relief by the previous scene of Creon and having to think about his sons. So we have these paired sons and their fates. Here we have the two brothers coming up against each other. Only one is going to survive. Creon is thinking about his sons, wants to try and retain both of them, sends one off to safety, etc.
Yes, parents and their children. It's this generational gaming that's going on here. It's continual throughout the text. Liza?
It's true. We get parents, Jocasta as a mother, Creon as a father. We haven't seen Oedipus. It's complicated. But we do get parents saying to their children, don't do this, don't kill each other, don't kill yourselves. And that is, I don't know, maybe it's a metaphor for how we approach war. Though, who knows? I'm not terribly qualified to speak on that.
Yes, and we should also mention that there are different versions of the story of Oedipus and Jocasta that exist. In some versions, Jocasta and Oedipus are long since dead by this point. So if you know the play Antigone, they're not major players in that sort of iteration of this story. Whereas here, obviously Jocasta is very much alive. It's the way the story plays out. Certainly in ancient Greek theatre played out in different ways depending on playwrights and what they were trying to do, and Euripides, of which this is vaguely based on, was reacting to earlier texts and deliberately being a bit contrary, as well as feeding on all the variant readings that were available. Other things more about this text than earlier text. Rachael, are you waving or?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one more thing, that we have Nuntius coming in, and yesterday I was saying that the difference between Gascoigne's part and the guy just before him is the guy, I should look and see who it is, but I can't remember his name, who was writing before that. He had the
Kinwelmersh.
family member. Huh?
Kinwelmersh.
Kinwelmersh.
I don't know how it's pronounced. Kinwelmersh. I genuinely don't. It's a weird name, and I don't know where to put the stresses.
I don't know. I mean, I would guess maybe the W is elided, so it's just Kinwelmersh.
Kinwelmersh, yeah.
Who knows?
We don't know. Anyway, him who wrote Act 1 and this scene that we've just done.
He wrote this scene?
Yeah, he wrote Act 4. So he wrote Act 1 and Act 4.
Oh,
so he's done this scene. So this scene is Kinwelmersh as well.
Oh my gosh. I was gonna say, he had in the first act, when he had them talking to, servants or other people, that it didn't have something, but this scene has something more in it, even though Jocasta is not talking to another family member. It has all the weight, because it is her family on the line, and it is the city, and in a way it's everything that her and her two previous husbands have built.
Yeah, I have to say, having read what we've read of Act 4 so far, that the weight of the relative lack of success of Act 1 might be down to the original, as that was the exposition scenes that were effectively added on to what remains of the Greek original. That Act 1 is very artificial, so I'm going to put forward an approximate thesis that maybe that Kinwelmersh just did what he could with the text he was given and was being relatively accurate, and this bit, which has a slightly greater pedigree, and also is in the middle of action. It's not doing... Act 1 was all exposition. It was all exposition. So it was a sort of thankless task to make it engage in the way that this does, because we know who they're talking about now. They're not telling us who these people are. We know who they are, and we want to know what happened to them. So it makes it fundamentally better. I don't know whether that makes the writing better or not. I don't know whether people have a feeling about that for Act 4 so far, whether it feels like it fits very nicely with what came before it. And with that interesting silence, David.
I had forgotten that it wasn't Gascoigne. When I was reading, it did feel more of a piece with as part of the whole. I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, in terms of the first act. I think.
But yeah, that comparison of text, which is possible. There is an online edition of the original text. I say the original, the thing that this is explicitly translated from, page for page, so you can compare. The Dumbshows are all additional. They're all new for this production. They're not in the translated text. They didn't do Dumbshows. Right, we are approaching the end of the session, so it's time for final thoughts. We've all been here from the beginning. How are we feeling about the play so far? Feeling about what we might want to do with it today is starting to creep in as well. We've got a thesis that maybe this is an outdoors event. And do we want to follow that as a thread for if we were doing it today, or would we want to do it indoors? Would we want to trim back things? Where do we want to go with this? I think it's given us an awful lot of options. I won't go to Rachael first because there's some cat issues. I'll go to David first. Any final thoughts?
I'm feeling quite exhausted by it, actually. It's powerful. There's a lot in here. Yeah, it's exciting and strong, and yeah, I think it would be great outside, and I think modern dress would work very well. I think there are lots of contemporary resonances as well.
Yeah, it's yeah. Liza, do you have any thoughts? Are you keen on the outdoors, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it being outdoors would certainly easily explain a lot of things, like the number of supernumeraries, the use of fire, the use of ordnance, the use of trumpets and cornets.
Fire pit.
Fire pit. All of these things would be more technically difficult to do in a way that was safe to do indoors. Although, I don't know if we have any record of parts of Gray's Inn burning down during this period. That might explain a few things. But also, the setting at the beginning just says, before the palace. And we never move to an indoor setting. So the setting is also outdoors. So, that's cool. I enjoyed reading Creon today. I think sympathetic Creon is not something I was expecting, but it's something that I was glad to get. I like when characters are sympathetic and not one-dimensional. And mythological characters, I feel, are at their best when they're written in the most human way possible, be they gods or be they mortals. So, yes, it seems strange that Bacchus should be the god everyone is praying to. He seems generally to be he seems generally to be a god of more fun things than the events in this play. But it's also possible that maybe this was done as part of a Dionysia at whichever inn of court it was. I could see the law students being quite keen on holding a Dionysia.
Yeah, or that it's just they've got a confused notion about how the Greek pantheon in relation to drama functioned.
A goat and wine party.
Absolutely.
I mean, who's to say no?
Well, who's to say the goat didn't sing? So before it died. So I'm up for that. By the way, how literal can we go with goat song? Rachael, any final thoughts?
I was just writing wine and goat cheese in the chat. What Liza was just saying about Creon. Oedipus, he left the city and he came back, and Polynices left the city and came back. So maybe it's one of those, what do you call it? I forget the story. In the Bible, the son, the prodigal son, prodigal son, I can't say words anymore. I don't know. Besides that, I think Jocasta is just such a wonderful character to be able to get into. They're all wonderful characters to get into. There's so much here, not just for characters, but in scene work that I think actors would drool over. Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. There's just a lot. There's a lot here, and it's great writing.
Well, I mean, and it's literally a lot here. It is a long text, and we're cramming. This session actually has been quite reasonable, but yesterday's session we crammed a lot of text in to make today and tomorrow quite reasonable in terms of length, and also because the scene lengths were uneven. So there is a bit of a question actually that if you go for a big outdoor event, you can stretch it out over quite a long period of time and make that work in a way. Indoors, this is a long show uncut, and plus the Dumbshows, some of which are really quite complex. This is working its way in the general direction of not just 3 hours but 4, if we're not careful here, and that's I'd say weirdly slightly easier to cope with if it's outdoors. Because you can sort of just saunter away in a slightly easier fashion and go and pick up some wine and just stand there and enjoy in a slightly distanced way. Eric, any final thoughts?
I'm not sure if I have anything to add that that we haven't said already. Just like, with the knife, take the kid, or whatever the line was. That was a good line.
Absolutely. Difficult to use out of context.
But generally, it seems to be like the first bit was very, very formal, and then we're getting closer to personal conflict, and then suddenly it comes political again. And it's like, I can't remember when is this written, because like in terms of context, it must have been quite, or at least when was this translated into?
This was translated 1566 or thereabouts. What it is translated from, I'll be able to give you a date in a moment, probably.
But then that would mean that like they translated it for Queen Elizabeth.
Not necessarily. The other play by George Gascoigne supposes, and these things may have ended up, but this doesn't feel like it's a royal event. There may be evidence. We've had other Inns of Court plays that ends up before royalty, but this I've not seen any particular indicators for that. That's why we're not 100% certain 66. It could be 67. It doesn't appear to be associated with a specific revels or anything like that.
I guess it's just curious because, like, also because of the name they've chosen Jocasta or Jocasta, depending on, they've chosen to center it around her character rather than, I don't know, Antigone or any other, like, I don't know, Eteocles or sort of, yeah. Any other character.
So Ludovico Dolce's Giocasta is 1549, so it's not that old. It's 20 odd years old plus. And that's so in that sense the title is following on from that. But they could always have changed the title if they wished. But yeah, it's doing a lot of work. It's doing a lot of work. Any other final thoughts before I close the session? Rachael, then Eric again.
Eteocles and Creon, Polynices and Oedipus have both left Thebes for extended periods of time, but I don't really know about Creon, but it seems like, but I think there is some parallel between those two sets of characters, that Eteocles and Creon have always stayed in Thebes, and they're probably very like Theban men. And Oedipus from leaving and being raised in a foreign kingdom must seem like a foreign king, and here Polynices is with foreign forces and a foreign culture. There's got to be a lot different there.
Eric.
I was just going to mention the sort of Dumbshows because, like, we've talked about them a bit, but like they're very complicated. They're like, it's like pageant level complicated, which is very, very interesting in terms of like putting that in a play. It's just wow.
Yeah, they're set pieces, aren't they? They're not small. Even some of them have been a little complicated. But these require quite a few people doing quite a few things. I just love this never-ending pit of this never-ending hole that you're trying to fill until somebody leaps in, and then it closes up immediately. And it's just it's really really odd images as well. They're really quite surreal in certain ways. Okay, well, that is as far as we've got with Jocasta. We have got the remains of Act 4 and then Act 5 to do, plus an epilogue written by somebody else. We're going to do all the writers tomorrow. do a bit of compare and contrast as we complete the play. All that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for all their work. Thank you very much, and goodbye. With knife then stick the kid.